We have no way of knowing if it's negotiable at some point in the future, or if they're just pulling the no trespassing, our land, we don't want anybody on it card, which happens around here with paper companies and other people who just decide they don't want people on their land, and they have the right to do that, unfortunately, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And Maine has a long history of the major landowners, the paper companies, allowing recreation on their land. In fact, there was bills passed by the legislature that takes away any liability those landowners may have if they allow other people to use their land. So that's the history in Maine of how that developed. So yeah, again, and COVID is out there. I mean, there's no doubt the last year has kind of put everything on hold. We felt going into the legislature this year, we would be there in the beginning, we could talk and we could work something out. And that unfortunately never really happened. So we are back at square one. Again, I tell people it's their land, respect it. It's not legally posted, but there are no trespassing signs, a couple that are up. And we also have knowledge that they don't want us to use their trails or the trails on their land. So we have to be respectful of that, and we're hopeful that we can come to some kind of a mutual agreement. Because as a town, and I don't say this idly, we were proud to have the Penobscot Nation as our neighbors. I mean, we all grew up learning history, and the Indians have a lot of history, and we understand that. And all we're trying to do is get back to where we were and understand why we are where we are today. And therein lies the problem.
Right. And there aren't really too many who actually reside around here, so it's not like they're actually part of our community. Maybe that's part of the problem. They don't feel that they're reaping the benefits of being here, so why should they let us reap the benefits when they get nothing from it?
And that's, if that's it, we can work with that. You know, let's talk about that. We have some, I think, very progressive ideas as how they can put this land in trust and get it with the vote of the town and have some mutual agreements. I mean, there's other opportunities available to the tribes that we have researched, but we haven't sat down and had a conversation where we can present that because there hasn't been that type of atmosphere. And again, they're you know, their view of this is much bigger than ours in terms of all the lands in Maine, and we understand that. But again, I go back to the Maine Implementing Act of 1980. It took 8 years to negotiate, and this is trying to be rewritten. Excuse me, it's bug season, even when you're in a screened-in porch. But anyway, it's, you know, we're hopeful, and to date, we have had very little conversation, very little understanding of what we think can happen if we knew exactly what they would like to have happen.
Do you think the fact that we're pushing back a little bit on the legal premise, what they want to do with their land, do you think that is antagonizing the situation and they're looking at us as an adversary?
I think as a realistic view, yes, I do, because we have been, you know, for instance, I just wrote the ambassador and said it's difficult for me to be one of 3 people that testified at the legislature against this bill, because typically, having been born in the 70s, haven't been blossomed in the 70s, is that we want to right all the wrongs, and I understand that, you know, but this is taking away the rights of the town, which go back to the inception of the state. And so there has to be a balance. And we feel that we have proposals that would allow that balance, but we haven't got there. You know, we haven't been allowed to even present them, and that's been difficult. Their picture is bigger than ours, but I can tell you that the reality of we were all been working on testimony. We've handed in written testimony. We got there 2 weeks ago. We testified. We're all ready for everything to happen. Then the governor's aide gets up, and he was the other of the 3 of us that testified against, basically said the governor would have a very difficult time supporting this bill because it takes away the rights of the basic industry, you know, the basic again, the DEP, the EPA, Fish and Game, wildlife, everything. It takes away all that control or all that rulemaking from the state. And I think that's why all of a sudden a motion was brought up by one of the legislators to table, and it got tabled on a 9-1 vote, a 9-0 vote in 1 minute. All of a sudden we're going, what happened? Okay, we're back another year again. So, yeah, it's difficult for the nation, I can understand, and it's difficult for the state. And we're a tiny, tiny piece of this, but that right to vote exists there for a reason, because home rule is the basis of Maine law. And home rule basically gives the towns and cities the right to increase ordinances above what the state says. And I feel that we are a very conservation-oriented recreational community. We have a tough balancing act because we want a lot of people to come and recreate, and we want to continue to expand those recreation opportunities. But at the same token, we want to preserve the nature, which is why people come here, as we look out behind my house. The legislature has basically given us 8 months to sit down and talk and get us off the table. We can come up with an agreement that's acceptable to both of us, that is not going to take away the nation's sovereign rights, and at the same token recognize the fact that this land is unique because it's what we call fee land. All the other lands, there were 40 parcels of land made available to the nations. Those were all in the unorganized territories, which come under the jurisdiction of LLRC and the state. We were one of only 2 pieces of land that were fee land that were in an organized town. And thus the reason that the town has the right to vote if the nation wants to put it into trust.